Well, thanks everyone for joining. As Mike said, we're excited to walk you guys through this. We're going to take you through our SCM Connections partner package that we have with SAP for integrated business planning that we call SPARK. It's going to take you through all of the details, what it entails, do a quick overview of IBP as well. So again, thanks for joining us. As far as, of course, hold on one second. My screen is frozen, so I cannot, oh, there we go. All right, so let's go through a quick agenda of just what to expect during our time together today. So we'll give you guys an introduction of who we are, who SCM Connections is, what we specialize in, why we are here today. I'm going to give a little bit of a brief overview of IBP. I think most of you who are joining us have an idea of what IBP is, but I do want to make sure we're getting everyone on the same page as to what IBP can deliver on and how that differs from what we provide in a SPARK package. So then we'll go through what SPARK is, the packages we offer in-house through what we've customized ourselves, what a project might look like should you move forward with a SPARK package, and then, like I said, just jump into the system, actually show you a little bit of an overview of IBP in and of itself and what it looks like, and we'll go from there. And then at the end, we will open it up for questions. As Mike said, there is a chat option or maybe a little question mark that you can go to and submit questions. So he can help facilitate that. Since I'm sharing my screen, I won't be able to see it. And if it makes sense to take a break and chat through somebody's question, we can do it on the fly, or else we'll just wait until the end. All right, Mike, back to you.
There you go. Just a little bit about us for SCM Connections. We are in the one of the leading supply chain integration partners with SAP. In this case, we're going to show you our homegrown proprietary package for quick deployment of SAP's IBP solution. The reason we got that is because we've been working with SAP for, as the partners for about 20 years, as SCM Connections for almost 10 now. And really lean into the SAP ecosystem, all the integration points they have to offer, and through a lot of our partnership with SAP, been able to actually achieve significant results in a very short timeline with our clients, delivering value and getting that return on investment from their SAP investments much quicker than in the past and any other on-premise solution. As a gold partner, we have some real strong relationships with SAP. I can really translate that value to our clients. A little bit more unique is that we're built 100% US-based employees and tend to have practitioners like Ashley and myself do a lot of these projects, and you'll see it's going to take a lot more of a process flow in terms of how it actually does what we ask it to do, not just a technical click point of view. So that's a little bit about us and really what gives us value to our clients.
All right, so I was just going to add a few other points just about who we are as a firm. So not only do we, specialize in SAP integrated business planning, we also can implement PPDS. But overall, we really like to think of ourselves as a supply chain transformation firm. So we really focus on process first. We, get ingrained with our clients, understand where they're at in their overall supply chain planning, and then bring the technology onto that. So as Mike said, a lot of our consultants actually have come from industry, including myself, where I actually started as an IBP user and led a very large global implementation as a business lead, moved into the consulting space a few years later. So I've been working in IBP since about 2017. So as we start going through the system later on and kind of what this entails, please feel free to ask questions from that lens too, as far as user adoption and things like that. Definitely well versed in that side of the house. So because of that and the fact that we feel like we understand the industry, we're not just throwing technology at a problem, we thought to ourselves, how does this work and how can we do this better and faster? So, we could just stand up a system and give you some calculations and it would be sort of out of the box. You make some customizations, but maybe your business isn't quite ready for that. So what we did was took all of our brains, came together and said, how can we make a pre-configured solution and get some of our clients up and running quickly with best practices that we all know exist. So, you hear the same questions from all your clients. You've got these customizations that they're coming to you and asking you for, and we're hearing it across the board. So it might not be standard in a setup or a implementation, but we put together essentially an entire platform called SPARK to basically implement these best practices on top of the out-of-the-box IBP planning area that you get when you buy your licenses. So that leads me to this wheel right here. And some of you maybe have seen this before, but this really gives a nice visual of the supply chain end-to-end collaboration functionality that SAP offers. And the top 4 little widgets up here is really where IBP sits. So we've got 4 different modules that can come with your IBP licensing. So you've got demand planning, sales and operations planning, inventory, and response and supply. So, some clients maybe start with just sales and operations planning. Some may do the whole suite. It really just depends on where they're at and what they're ready to do, what they're using today. Are they moving from a different system, things like that. But these 4 different licenses we will touch on a little bit more in depth, but I just thought this gives a nice visual of where IBP plays into the whole SAP supply chain world. So where IBP really gains a ton of benefit, and the first thing out of the box that you think is it's a unified user experience. So as you saw on that wheel, everything sits together. Everything is in a circle. So you're not, logging out and logging back into these different modules or different licenses. Everything is in one planning area using the same data. Your partner next door is seeing the exact same thing you are. You don't have to send spreadsheets back and forth. Everything resides in your cloud and is refreshed in real time. So IBP in and of itself lives as an Excel add-in, which I will go through in just a bit. But there's also a web version, so a web user interface too, that's extremely collaborative, very user-friendly, gives you really nice visuals of the data that you're looking for. But then you can also go back to that Excel view that many users are comfortable with. Everyone uses Excel. They've got the spreadsheet they've built and been using for 10 years. So it really allows for users to adapt it quickly because it looks and feels like what they're used to without having the clunkiness of having to actually save spreadsheets and look at version 1 versus version 3 and what the differences are. IBP does all of that for you. So again, just a unified experience here. So like I said, we looked at this and said, how can we do this quicker? So, you'd see some of these projects that were taking a year or 2 and clients over customize. And a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And I can speak from firsthand experience, when you're trying to either replicate bad behaviors into a brand new system, you can kind of paint yourself into a corner. And so, you come on and IBP comes out with upgrades quarterly and you're trying to bring those upgrades on, but you've done so much customization that that upgrade isn't even going to work in your environment, for example. So what we came up with here is like, how do we get our clients to have a great foundation? So, they're getting rid of those spreadsheets, they're getting on a cloud-based solution, and they don't feel like it's this overwhelming, daunting implementation that just seems too big for maybe where they're at in their planning process. So it's a fixed price, a fixed scope, and fixed duration. And I will show you what that looks like here. But again, we took best practices from all the powers that be within SCM Connections, sat down, put a list together to say, we know what our clients need, especially when this is their first planning system. So how can we get them up and running at a low cost with low risk and at least get them live and build that roadmap so they can keep adding on to it in the future. And so listed here is just a couple of our success stories we've had in the last couple of years. So we've done demand planning, S&OP, and response and supply for these customers you see here on the screen. All right, so package benefits. So I kind of touched on a few of these already, but proven best practices. So taking all of the industry knowledge that we have, the technical knowledge that we have, and put that into a solution that will provide some best practices to get your business up and running. Removing the risk. So, when you're looking at a time and expense project, or you don't know what you don't know, and you're kind of taking that risk to say, I think we're going to spend this much on an implementation, but who knows what's going to come around the corner, where this really puts all the risk on us to say, this is going to work, we're going to get you up and running quickly, and the risk falls off of the client. And again, foundation. So you want to really get a great foundation. So for those of you who don't know, IBP does upgrade quarterly. And sometimes, they're just more of a technical upgrade. But there are other times where really, really neat functionality does come out, and SAP does a great job of showing that roadmap for the next couple of years of what they see coming for IBP. And so what this package allows you to do is have that flexibility, because you might have a requirement today that might not be possible in IBP, but it will come out in the next 9 months, for example. So you wouldn't want to over configure something today that won't allow for you to easily adapt that without having to unravel a ton of technology that you've put into your planning area. So again, Spark gives you that foundation so that you can move and shake and just keep growing with IBP as it grows in and of itself. And then ensuring speed to your ROI. So we can start getting clients live in as little as 12 weeks, which we will go through what a project plan might look like for a 12-week implementation. But you can just at least start seeing that return of your investment quickly. So, if you've got leadership who says, this is great, but I don't know if we can, buy all 4 modules right now, or we don't have the resources to do a year-long implementation. This will allow you to actually see a benefit and actually see some results right away. So then you can continue that momentum forward and continue to expand on your implementation. So again, these are the 4 modules. All 4 can be included in Spark. So we do see mostly clients will start with either S&OP or demand planning, but all of these we've put together customizations in a package to implement depending on the type of business that you are working in. And so we can go through each of these modules for those who aren't familiar with exactly what they entail. So starting with S&OP. So the S&OP license can give you some forecasting. So whereas the demand module is going to give you some really advanced statistical algorithms to leverage, S&OP gives you some of those more, I would say, basic, or not necessarily machine learning, but just some seasonal models, some of the copy past periods, or doing some averages to give you some type of baseline for an S&OP. And so that module in and of itself also gives you what's called an infinite heuristic. So I think a lot of times when we talk S&OP, it's all about the consensus demand. You've got all of these external streams. You've got your finance team or your marketing team. You've got your demand planners doing their job. And how do you get to that final consensus, review it with your leadership, see impact to revenue, potentially what that might be doing to, let's say, inventory. And S&OP can handle all of that, but the only thing that it would not do is constrain your plan. So it's giving you an idea of if you have a problem in your supply chain, but it's not necessarily going to fix it for you. It would go back to the planner to make adjustments and do scenarios and try to get their overall end-to-end plan to a good place. And then the demand module is going to take that stat forecast that I mentioned and give you a lot more machine learning capabilities. So it can provide demand sensing. So for those who may have really short product life cycles and that 6-week time period, you're seeing a ton of fluctuation and you want to make sure that IBP is taking that into account versus maybe looking back at a 2-year period of history that you want to pick up seasonality from. That all would live within this demand license. There's some really great functionality that comes with demand as far as it taking the heavy lifting from your planners to do an analysis on sales. So for example, there is a functionality called time series analysis, and IBP will actually go back and do an entire analysis of all your sales history and give you definitions for all of your products or product categories, however you run it, to say, I see intermittency on this product. This product I would definitely call seasonal. This is how often you have intermittency. So where your planners are sitting there and scrubbing analysis and going back for 2 years to look at their demand patterns to figure out how they want to forecast going forward, it would do that for you. So that's just an example of some of the more automatic analytics that IBP will give for you with the demand module. Mike, do you want to go through the other 2?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I had a hard time with the mute button there. Sure, from the inventory optimization side. So the inventory optimization really is probably one of the fastest ways to realize value that that IBP can provide, because it really hits directly at the capital targets. It hits directly at how much inventory you carry to meet specific safety stock goals. So the idea is not so much inventory as of meet inventory projections, but inventory like safety stock. So how much inventory do I need at certain areas, given the inherent variability of my supply chain? And then quantify that, and then create an optimized inventory plan that says, here's where you should position your inventory in the most efficient manner to protect your service level targets, given the variability in your supply chain. One of the reasons why it's very good fit for SPARK is because, one, extremely quick time to value, and two, it plugs into a lot of other tools very quickly. So the output of it being a safety stock target or an inventory floor, that goes into just about any other supply chain planning system you have. So if you're going to start with one, that's a very easy one to pull data out and push data back, or pull data in and push data back out. And like I said, create an instant either service benefit or capital benefit in your organization. The other one being supply planning. So that one being, as Ashley was saying, the S&OP is a lot more the infinite heuristic. The supply planning would take that and then also add to it constrained planning. So that would be your optimization engine. So it uses a linear programming engine to accommodate constraints. Constraints can be really anything that matter to your organization. It could be machine constraints, labor constraints, raw material constraints, transportation, storage. Whatever is a limiting factor in your supply chain can be optimized through this. So we have a lot of clients that would do this for, say, seasonal pre-builds. How early should I pre-build? What assets should I turn on at what times? And being able to actually maximize your assets in a way that, again, meets service at the most efficient way possible. Those optimization engines really provide a lot of value, specifically, in, like I said, in seasonal businesses, but also anybody that has a lot of different sourcing options or trying to manage a complex network is a good fit for the supply line.
So a few things of what's in and what's out, and I should mention too, we have, once we get into an SOW phase with a client, we've got a really large document that we like to review with them that gives them an idea of what they will receive. And it gets a bit technical, so not great for a webinar, but it's, again, when the client doesn't know what they don't know exactly, you know, if they're looking at that package, I don't know if I need 15 custom key figures or 30 custom key figures. How would I know that yet until I actually see the system? So we will do that work up front before a project gets kicked off to do a review to say, here's what you've done. We have an exploration call to understand their business, to get an understanding of what they might need, what their processes are, and then we kind of guide them to understand where they would fit into each of those buckets of customization. So that's extremely detailed out in a conversation we have with our clients up front. But this is some high level bullets that I just wanted to go through of things that are in, or what would be considered an additional enhancement or something we would be adding on top to the package. So typically with SPARK, we only integrate to one SAP supported source system. So maybe we're passing master data and transactional data back and forth from ECC or S4. We've got clients that are using Business Warehouse, etc. So we typically try to integrate to just one system. Once integration starts expanding outside of that, the workload will increase. We follow a train the trainer methodology. So we have, you know, what would maybe be called a super user that follows along in the project to make sure they're being trained as we go. They're part of testing. They understand the system. They understand the customizations that took place as to why. And then it would be up to them to take that to the larger team to facilitate additional training. So again, that also saves a bit of time. One single planning area. So you can have multiple planning areas within your environment within IBP, but this would be us configuring just one. We do facilitate all testing. So even though a lot of this is pre-configured and we've tested it ourselves, you've got all those customizations that still have to take place, as well as data integration, which we all know data can cause a lot of hiccups when you're trying to get through testing. So we would facilitate unit testing internally. We would move into the system integration testing, making sure data is pulling through accurately, it looks correct, you know, matching it up to the source system, and just ensuring all of that is flowing through as we would expect it to, and then move into a UAT cycle so that the users are getting in, trying to break the system, doing their scripts to make sure their day-to-day practices can be solved for with the implementation before going live. It also includes two tenants, so you would have a QA and a production environment. So QA for the initial configuration testing to take place, and then once we would sign off on a go live, we would move all of that into your production environment. And then planning profiles, kind of generic, but just to touch on. This includes, helping to set up all of your forecast models if you're in the demand piece, that supply planning heuristic setup, whether it's constrained or unconstrained. We would get all of that up and running. It would be part of testing so that all of these more elaborate algorithms or heuristics that get ran, or jobs, for lack of a better term, are all set up and functioning before we would ever sign off on the project. Then a few things that we get questions on once in a while are listed here as to if these would be considered in. And so I will preface to say these can be added in, they just aren't within those more basic packages. So any sort of custom coding within SAP, custom data structures, dynamic levels of security. So if you have a really robust organization and or potentially third parties that come in and look at your information and you need quite a bit of security set up, that would be a little bit more work. Single sign-on is not included, and then integration to anything outside of SAP. So I know a lot of clients use SAP as well as other systems. And so while there's a lot of really great work that can be done to make them all connect, that would not be included in SPARK.
And not that it couldn't be, it just isn't in the standard timeline and pricing. It'd have to be accommodated individually.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so giving you just an understanding of what a project timeline might look like. So here's the 3 packages. So we would start with blueprint. We do 2 weeks. So again, those 2 weeks really need to be focused on master data integration, transactional data integration. Where's your sales coming from? Any sort of point of reference that you need to pull in for your supply plan. As well as just understanding, again, that first week, we really focus on process. What do you do today? Who's doing it? What's their role? Why are they doing it? Who are they sharing it with? So then we can take our best practices and really guide you as to how to use what we have ready for you. So as well as defining any of those customizations, so custom key figures, custom attributes. We would then move into a build and train cycle. And so whereas some implementations I've seen, the consultants walk away, they build it, and it's this grand reveal at the end, and you have to test it. With this, we don't do that because we do not have, one, the time to do that, and we feel IBP is actually extremely fluid in the way that it can be built. So there's not a one way to do anything. So we usually will start building, have a couple days the end of the week, show the users, get their advice. Does this feel like you would want it to? If not, we would go back and make a change, do that cycle again. So one, it helps with training. So the users, again, aren't feeling like they're going into UAT blind and they don't even know where to click or how to log in or look at the information they need to. They're along the journey. They're understanding the changes that are being made along the way. And it kind of goes back to why we call this a blueprint. So this is not a firm F-spec that we're handing off to somebody to go configure and, you can only pull it up in a certain transaction and that's it. It's a blueprint. It's giving us a guideline of where to begin, but during this build and train phase, we would still have key design decisions. We would still be testing and kind of tweaking along the way so that everybody's expectations are kind of being signed off as we go. Then would move into system integration testing, a round of UAT, a week of cutover, and then go live in hypercare. So there is what we see quite a bit here that clients do ask to add on to this is extended hypercare. So we actually have a ton of ongoing support that we're doing right now. So, we get everyone live, they're feeling good, but they like to keep some of our subject matter experts on board, maybe part-time or have office hours once a week in some small capacity to have the users continue working through their new system and their new process, and we stay on board for that. So that's also a customization that sometimes gets added onto this. Yeah, so I'm going to go in a little more detail on what this might look like. So some of this might be a little bit redundant, but so the project management. So this is all that pre-work. So this would be before that 12-week timeline gets kicked off, for example, if we were looking at the silver plan. But that detailed SOW deep dive. So if that might need to be a demo, we would do a demo, a robust demo to say, here's what you can expect so that they have an understanding going into a project of what they're going to need so that they can align on customizations up front. We would follow any sort of normal, project meeting documentation that we do with any other project. None of that would be compromised by doing a SPARK project, and then have a kickoff meeting and introduction. So that would usually be, a week of work here and there, depending on the flexibility or the capacity that clients have before we kick off a project. But we, again, like to do that before we get started because we just feel like it gives everyone a better understanding that there'd be no surprises once a project gets kicked off. So design phase 2 weeks, as I mentioned. So aligning on any of those custom attributes, custom key figures, all of the integration work that needs to be done, and then laying out that blueprint. So we usually do a sign off on each of these milestones as well. So again, everyone's on the same page. So at the end of the blueprint, we review it with our clients. Here's what we're thinking for you guys. Here's where the information is going to come from. Here's what you can expect to see as a result, and start building that out. Blueprints usually have, I would say, anywhere between 4 and 5 versions throughout the project. So as you start getting closer and closer in and you're testing and tweaking, we continue to keep that document updated so that everyone's on the same page. Build phase, 5 weeks to, I believe it goes out to 10 weeks for the larger project plan. So it's that download, upload functionality that would take place right off the bat. So a client gets their license, they give us access to it, and right away we would upload the SPARK planning area into their environment. And then from there on out, we would start building any custom configuration. And so that's a focus on data mapping. All key figures and attributes that come out of the box can be renamed. So all of that work would take place with either the business team or the IT team. And then again, working through any customizations, configurations that needs to be done. Moving into testing and cutover. So again, unit testing, SIT testing, UAT. Something to call out here is we provide in a SPARK project plan test scripts that are more technical. So, here's what we did, here was the expectation of what we did, make sure it works. Now the business would then in turn layer on more process scenario test scripts to say, all right, the functionality, 1 + 1 = 2. But what if I do it this way? Would my cross-functional partner want to see it as a 2 or do they want to see it as a 1? And so those type of business scenario test scripts would come from the client. And then train the trainer, which I touched on earlier. So then go live hypercare, we would get everybody up and running live, make sure everything looks good once we are live in production, and then kind of hand it off to the team from there and decide, do you want to continue on with additional hypercare? Should we lay out a roadmap of what's next? Again, this is supposed to be your foundation. This isn't we sign off at this point and are done. So we actually closed 2 SPARK projects last year. Both are in scope to kick back off this year to do additional licensing as well as additional ongoing support to keep their user acceptance high. So we kind of see this as just the kickoff point of the relationship getting started and moving forward on the total roadmap. So documents to be handed off here. You would have your data map, integration guide, making sure everyone knows where the information is coming from and going to, and have a full understanding of all of the integration. Your blueprint document, all of the training, quick reference guides we provide, so various training documents, process maps, key figure guide, and definitions. So a definition guide of every calculation that you can see in your environment, where it's pulling from, how it's calculating, would all be passed off. And then again, a future enhancement list. So putting in place a project plan and a roadmap going forward for our clients. Okay, so I'm going to actually jump into the system to do a little demo of what IBP looks like for those who maybe have not seen it yet. And I will share this deck with everyone who's joined once the webinar is closed, so you have it as a point of reference as well. All right, so I am going to jump right into IBP here. So as I mentioned, IBP is right in Excel, but there's also a web user interface, which I'll go to second. And so this should look very familiar to everyone on the call. This is Excel. And what you can see up here is an add-in. And so once you get your license, you would have this add-in installed onto your laptop or your computer. And you click on the add-in and you log in. So you can see it says disconnect here because I'm already logged in. So once you log in, this ribbon opens up with all of these different buttons and tools you can use to analyze your data. So again, keep in mind, this looks like Excel, it feels like Excel, but there is no longer the need to save this template. So you don't have to do a file save as, email it, save it in your shared local folders, let your partner know it's ready to be pooled, email it to them, any of that. It's all pooling from the cloud. So you can see here in the middle, you've got a save data button and a refresh button. And these two are just a nice reminder that if you're making adjustments in here, you save the data, it's in the cloud. Somebody else could open the same view up on their computer, refresh it, and all that information would be there in real time. So really, really nice way to jump from Excel spreadsheets into a cloud-based solution without feeling like you're completely redesigning the way that your processes work today. So for this situation, I'm just going to walk through kind of a generic demand planning demo. I don't want to get too technical on all of this, so I'm just going to show some of the functionality that IBP offers and what it looks and feels like. This could obviously go into the whole supply planning piece, but we'll just focus on demand for today. So what I have open here is what's called a template or a planning view. And so it's really a report. It's a pre-designed template that I've said I want to pool my product families, my product descriptions, my regions up by customer, and then my calculations. So I have chosen this is what I want to see. I've chosen that I want to see it in monthly buckets, and I've chosen filters to say I only want to see my product family cola. So we're going to pretend like we are a soda company today. And so this first template here, and you can see I've got tabs on the bottom, just like Excel would be, of sales. So the first thing I'm doing in my demand planning process is analyzing my sales. What did I do last year? Do I think I'm going to do better than that this year? Is there some outliers out there that I'd like to correct? Maybe we had a promotion last year and it was a one-off and I really don't want IBP to pick that up as some sort of seasonal trend that we're having. I want to smooth out my sales history. And so this view would be something you could use to do that. This first key figure says actuals quantity prior year. So I'm actually pulling in my sales from the year before June 21st. So this is actually representing my sales from June of 2020. And it's just a nice way to stack information on top of one another so that you can do that analysis all in one screen. You don't have to open this up to show 50 different columns to actually get to the number you're looking for. And this can be done with various calculations and key figures. So I recently had a client who had actuals quantity prior year, and then they also wanted actuals prior year or 2 LY on top of that so that they could see in just 3 cells on top of one another, their sales history being pulled in and refreshed. So I've got my prior year actuals, got my actuals for this year, and then I've got this adjustment key figure. So this allows a user to make adjustments. So I can actually type right into here an adjustment if I would like. So you can see here I did 2,000. So let's come over here. I'm going to do, great. So last year we did 2,300. This year we're at 19. I'm going to split the difference and say 2,100. I can type right into there, hit save data. And what this is going to do is refresh on my screen. And again, this would be visible to anybody else who logs in and has access to this key figure, and they would see the update that I made. This key figure here, I did want to touch on. It does come with the demand license and is a really nice, one of those heavy lifting pieces that I had mentioned earlier. IBP will scrub and look for outliers for you. So you can actually run a job. It will go back and do an analysis of your history and it would say, based on the last 2 or 3 years of history, I think this is an outlier, and it will give you a recommendation of what it believes the sales should be. Again, just a nice point of reference. You can use it if you'd like, but it can sit here and just say, this is what I would do. And then obviously your demand planners know best and would come in and make the adjustments they would like. But what you do is once you make this adjustment, this is what I'm going to feed into my forecast. So I want my statistical forecast to respect the adjustments I've made. I want that to be the final say into my forecast. Before I move on, just a few just nice things that you can do right here on your screen. One, you can see there's a chart up here. So there's really nice charting capabilities right on your screen. So I've got my actuals quantity prior year, my actuals quantity. I can just remove this. My chart will refresh. So on the fly visuals that you can do. I know a lot of clients like to use this, if they're in a meeting and they need to share their screen just to give, leadership and understanding of how they're trending. They don't want to have to go through all of this information and try to figure out what's going on. You could use a chart right on the fly based on what's on your screen. The other huge win with IBP is the aggregation and disaggregation. So you're no longer, pulling in different tabs of different information to see it at the product family level, and then you also want to see it at the product description level. You can aggregate and disaggregate right here. So I can remove this. So I'm just going to say delete this attribute. And it just aggregated all my data up to the product family region level. So everything can pull in and pull out right on the fly. Up here in this planning view, you can see this is where you would pull in a new view, but you can also edit this view. So I just did that one piece just to get rid of an attribute to do a quick aggregation. But if I wanted to pull it back in, I could come into edit planning view. And this is really where you're picking and choosing what you're looking at. So I've got, it's extremely user friendly as far as if you just read through this, you would really very quickly understand what you're looking at. So you got your time, your attributes, your key figures, your layout, your filter, and alerts. So you're going through this and you're really just deciding what do I want to look at. So anyone who's used to a reporting tool, it's very similar to you going in and putting in the parameters of what you want to pull back in a report. So I can come in here and say time periods, I want to look by month, I want to look rolling for 13 periods, and I'm picking the months that I want to look at. I could do periods and total, so I could see June 21 through June 22, and it would give me a total on the end. I could just look at a total of specific periods if I'd like, but you can pick and choose how you want to look at your data. You could look at day, technical week, month, quarter, year. Again, these are all set up for our clients to represent, if they work in a specific fiscal calendar, all of that could be pre-configured up front so that their time periods make sense for their business. Attributes, I'm looking at product family and customer region. So what I got rid of before was product description. So I could pull that back in by just clicking a button. It would come back in here. You can pick and choose the order at which you are looking at your attributes. So I want it to aggregate a family first, then description, then customer region. So you would move these around. Here's the A to Z functionality. So I want to see it, A to Z, Z to A, etc. You can do subtotals. So similar to some of the Excel functionality that you're probably used to. And then your key figures. So we've got quite a bit in here. This is our demo environment, but all of these would be based on the customizations that took place on top of the out-of-the-box IBP implementation. So key figures are calculations or stored key figures. So if you're just trying to store points of reference, those could also live in a key figure. So for example, if your finance team's giving you some targets, you could store that in a key figure. It might not need to be calculated or feed into anything, but you just always want it in your view so that you can do an analysis or variances against it. That would all live within a key figure. So you can pick and choose what you want to look at over here. Again, that was my prior year, my actuals quantity, adjusted, outlier correction. Layout, rows and axis, so just pulling things making it as visual to your liking of where you would like to look at the information. And then your filter. So I can pull just these two product families and the report would come back with only those two product families. Alerts, I won't get too into, but there's a lot of alert functionality where you can say, show me where my actuals adjusted does not match my actuals so that it could pull back as a red font, something like that to say to the user, hey, you made adjustments here, and it's kind of screaming at them to say, this is what's going on. All right. So I'm going to keep going on the process here to show some of the user adjustments that can be made. So within the demand planning module, you can get what's called best fit forecasting. So you can put together a model to say this is a seasonal product. I want to run all of the different types of seasonal algorithms against it, and I want IBP to tell me what was the best choice. So this specific example here is I ran a model with 4 different algorithms. I did simple moving average, single exponential smoothing, double, and triple. And so what I said to IBP was run my product family COLA by region, these 4 algorithms, and give me what you think is the best option based on the lowest MAPE, so the lowest error. And it looks like it's choosing triple exponential smoothing here. And so this is nice because you can see the results of all of them, but your statistical forecast is respecting the lowest MAPE. So this is not a one-stop shop. You can run a specific algorithm to a specific product if you want. So if you have a tried and true product, it never changes, you just like it to be a moving average, you could do that and then have a whole nother product or product family running in a completely different model with a completely different filter. So it's extremely dynamic in the way that users set this up. And part of our project work would be to help guide that with some best practices and looking at the analysis of your past demand and give a guidance as to what each of these algorithms do and how they fit certain patterns best. Okay, so DP review. So this is, let's say I'm a demand planner. I'm looking at my stat forecast and I really want to make some adjustments because I've been given insight from, various teams and do some analysis before I get to that final consensus. So if I'm looking at, for example, this specific, it's probably kind of small. Hold on one second. That is better. So my sales team has given me insight to what they believe the forecast might be. And maybe they give it to me at the month level, for example. I could put in their sales forecast at the month and set disaggregation logic to move it down to the week. Maybe it's based on the last 12 weeks of sales, something like that. But we would set all of that up for you guys to say, this is the disaggregation proportionality to put things in a weekly level if they come in at month and vice versa. So again, that aggregation and disaggregation is extremely dynamic and can be customized within this package. So my stat forecast is 792, my local demand plan is 792, my demand planning quantity is 792, and my consensus. So this is saying I've made no adjustments. Everything's just running through the full hierarchy of demand planning. But I'm a demand planner and, I think this, this could be called a completely different name as well if that would be what the client would be looking for. But since this is Excel, I can just type right into here and put even a formula in, and IBP would respect it and save it to the cloud. So I want to say, what I think we're going to do 10% higher than this, for example. I can do equals this times 1.10, hit enter. I've got my value here. I can save the data, and it would save into the system right away, and that new value would exist. And what you'll see here is now it's going to flow through to my consensus. So now I have a variation, right? My stat forecast was 792. My local demand plan is 871. So it's still going to store this. It's not going to disregard anything that your stat forecast is telling you, but this is where you can build that demand plan. So you've got my sales team saying this, IBP gave me this, and here's my adjustments I made as a demand planner. And so on top of that, that's where some of those customizations might come in to say, I want a variance key figure to always refresh to say, what was my difference between my sales forecast and my local demand plan? Give me an output. Certain things like that the client might ask for to keep track of all of the changes that get made throughout their demand planning process. And so lastly here, we're talking about revenue. So any of the units that you're looking at, actual values, you're going to see dollar values against it in real time. So something I see clients do a lot, and this would also be included in SPARK because it's just part of your IBP stand-up, is using what's called a scenario or what if planning. Really, really quick, on the fly, local capabilities for you to say, what if this happened? What would that do to my revenue? And so up here, you can see something called scenarios. And I could create a quick scenario here to say SPARK promotion. And what IBP is going to do, it's going to copy all this information from this base view and put it into a scenario for me to play around with. So it's my own local sandbox to make changes, see the impact of those changes, and then decide if I actually want to make the change. So I don't want to do it in the whole system and disrupt anything else going on. I just want to see what it does. And so it's really nice because you have all the functionality and all of the calculations that you already get with your system, but now you have a little playground to do some of that work. And so you can see my scenario got populated here. And I want to look at my scenario next to my baseline. So I'm going to pull baseline back in. You can do this in this edit planning view up here. All right, so maybe I'm talking to my sales team and they say, there's a chance we might get a huge uplift in our America region in the month of July. Let's go ahead and just see what that does to revenue. Maybe we just want to see what the dollar amount might entail. So I can come up here in this scenario. I'm just going to pick a week, for example. I'm going to change this to 5,000. That's our stretch goal. We really want to hit 5,000 for this promotion this week. I'm typing it right into my scenario, not my baseline, saving my data. And again, what this is going to do is refresh all my calculations in my environment to see them side by side. So I'm going to come back over here to revenue, and I should see a difference in costing for my sales forecast. So you can see here, I scroll over to July, and again, aggregated, right? My Spark promotion is 962,000 in revenue, where my baseline is 512. So right there, it automatically, I could aggregate it, I could disaggregate it, I could come back and see what I did and what the impact was to my revenue. And maybe I say, that seems a bit too rich. We're probably not going to hit that. And you could, just get rid of this scenario. It would never amount to anything. It's just local to your own views, or you can promote it. So I could come back up into here to manage. In my Spark promotion scenario here, I can actually click promote and apply the changes, and we would watch that update the baseline. So great, I liked the result. I'm going to go ahead and promote it to baseline and move forward. So very, very quick from a what if scenario. And then the last thing I was going to show, just because I do feel like a lot of people, when you lose the thought that your Excel sheet is local to you and you're doing that save as and you're putting it in your folder on your desktop, and you have that comfortable feeling that you're the one making the change and nobody can mess with what you've been working on. Now everything's in this unified system, it's pulling from the cloud. A lot of people like to track their change, and there's two different ways you can do that. One is called a planning note, and I'll show you what that looks like. And the other is change history. So we can actually enable against any of these key figures you see functionality on the back end to give you essentially a report to say, tell me who changed it, how often they changed it, what they changed. And it can be pulled, by your leadership or whatever it might be to see how things have changed over time in specific key figures. But from a planning note, I can say here, so let me get rid of this scenario so we're not looking at so much information. Go back to my baseline. And I had made a change here on this local demand plan, right? I increased it 10%. So I want to come back onto this cell and I want to add a planning note. So what I just want to remind myself when I come back maybe for my SNOP meeting next month to say, why did I make that change? Well, 10% uplift due to potential marketing campaign. I can type in a reminder of why I did what I did. I can save that note, and that note is going to save on that cell, meaning the week of 7/4, my local demand plan for COLA and the Americas for all time, so that I can consistently come back and know why I made the change, when I made it, and what it was for. So if I hover over this, you can see here, it's telling me it was me, the date and time it was changed, the value that was changed, etc. And so if you continue to make changes over time, you can also show planning notes, and they're going to stack them on top of one another. So if I came and made a change again and added another planning note, my last note would not disappear. It just would become essentially a report in here where you could see what you did, again, the value that you changed, when you changed it, who changed it, etc. And then in addition, so I made it at this level, but if I want to take my customer region out of here, another nice aggregation view, I can aggregate this up and my planning note remains. So now I know I might not have made the change at this level, but beneath the covers, something was changed. And then I can click into here and understand why. And that's really nice, for like, say you're a manager and you've got 3 people on your team and they're making different adjustments to different product families, but you own the entire menu of products. So you want to look at things at a higher level and then come in and say, who made the change? Whose area is being volatile right now? Why are they messing around with each of these things? And kind of have a report to look back on. So one thing I didn't pull in here was accuracy or variance key figures. So all of your forecast accuracy would be tracked in here, and key figures, and all could be customized to what you would track to today. And within Spark, we actually have pre-configured quite a few forecast accuracy metrics that we've seen our clients use most commonly. So some of that would already be included as well. So that's a good example of things that we've added on to the planning area that you get out of the box to say, we've seen clients track their accuracy these 5 ways, and you actually already are going to have that. Now, is there anything else you would want to add on top of that? So yeah. So again, this is the Excel view. I do want to touch on the web view really quick, just to show you how user-friendly that is. So you can get to it from here, or you could save the URL just in your favorites, but you can click this home button and it will take you to your custom URL, and you're gonna have a ton of tiles pop up. So anyone familiar with S4 or Fiori should look very familiar. So you get all these different tiles and functionality with IBP. This all is included in Spark as well. So this is all kind of out of the box, depending on the license you buy, functionality that you can manage within this web view. And so, you know, we've got manage product lifecycle, for example. This would be something that comes with the demand planning module that allows you to do phase in and phase out curves on products. So if you're introducing new products, you need to model it after a previous product, you would set all that up here in your web view right in this tile. There's something called web-based planning, which we're actually seeing a pretty big uptick in all of this for clients that have external partners that they collaborate on for their demand. So if you've got maybe a vendor, for example, that you share a forecast with, and right now you're emailing it to them back and forth, they're giving you feedback to say, nope, that's not going to work, I don't have capacity, etc. You could actually give them access to just the user web interface. They wouldn't have to ever go into Excel. You could set it up for just them. They would come into this web-based planning view and be able to pull the forecast themselves and take a look at what you've released to them. So again, trying to eliminate the emails back and forth, the massive charts that are clogging up your email inbox, and actually just look at it here. So I'll show you what that might look like. It should look very familiar to what I was just showing you right in Excel. But again, it's pulling a file in the web view, and you can actually collaborate on it real time. So there's my planning note as well. So your planning notes come pull into here. So if, let's say you're making a change and you want to share it with your vendor and you want to tell them why you made that change, they would see it in here. So any changes that I make to this local demand plan in here would refresh. I would save the data. I could open this back up and I would see the information in real time as well. So a really nice collaboration tool between the web UI and Excel. There is also a ton of analytics and dashboard reporting you can do. That all comes with Spark. It comes with your IBP setup. So if you want to kind of manage by exception, so you come in the morning and you want to see, you know, how short am I on demand? What's going on before I actually dig into all of the data within my organization? You could create analytic charts to give you an idea. This one I created just for example to show me my customer shortfall. So where is my supply not meeting my demand? And I'm seeing here, it looks like it's mostly coming from this caffeine-free Buzz Cola. This variety pack looks like it's doing pretty well, and a bit for here. So then I might want to drill into this, make some adjustments, talk to my supply team, see what's going on for the day. But really nice analytic capabilities that users can do on the fly and create themselves. Again, all included in Spark. Okay, so we're at 3 o'clock. I want to pause here. Mike, if you didn't have anything else to add, I was going to maybe just open it up for questions.
No, I don't have anything else. I think that's a good overview. Of course, you know, each one of these modules that we talked about can be explored in a lot more depth, you know, for the individual usage or projects, but it's a nice overview of what's available.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that I think we're seeing a lot of people find really useful because of just the quick time to value. Not just that, but it's the same platform that the largest IBP implementations use. It's just kind of configured in a very digestible manner. And then a lot of clients will just expand off of that as well. So they don't use it as an endpoint, but rather a foundation. And that tends to be a really successful model.
Yep. All right. So any questions from anybody? Happy to answer anything anyone has.
I think that's it. Ash, I think you covered everything perfectly.
Well, thank you. I know that was a lot of talking in 1 hour. So again, I will share this deck so everyone has it as a point of reference. You'll have obviously our contact information, so any questions arise, please feel free to reach out. We are happy to do demos or dig into, more technical of what you receive within the SPARK package and what those best practices really look like for certain companies or certain types of organizations. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll send this information out soon.
Thanks, everybody. Talk soon.
Thanks.